Hi everyone, thank you for watching our panel discussion, New Normal in Shipping, our current shipping trends here to stay. We would like to thank our panelists and sponsors for making this video possible. Please like and subscribe for more.
Thank you all for joining us today for this Young Ship session which we are organizing with this eminent panel on the latest development in the shipping industry in Sri Lanka. We refer to it as the new normal, and we are trying to discuss with the objective today to see how we can collaborate amongst these industry specialists to see how best we can support the industry and to support the economy of Sri Lanka. Logistics companies connect firms from markets providing various services, from inventory management to multimodal transportation, freight forwarding, warehousing. They play an important role in the global manufacturing, which is complex and multi-locational. If you take an example, an iPhone, for its components, they use over 200 suppliers from over 43 countries. So coordinating all that and getting the items on time and to get the final product out, that requires a lot of logistics effort. So this is the importance of logistics in the current context. The cost of logistics as a percentage of GDP can be up to 25% in some developing economies, as compared to 6 to 8% in developed countries. So better efficiencies in sectors can therefore boost competitiveness, and you can track this through the Logistics Performance Index, which we call the LPI. Sri Lanka is today ranked at the 92nd position, whereas our close countries like India would be ranked around the 45th. If you look at the developed countries like Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Belgium and Singapore are ranked among the top 5 countries in the world. So in terms of, for a layman, LPI indicates the ease of doing business and how efficiently they can move goods from across borders as well as within. Hence, we strongly believe it is time for us to change in the way how we did things, and to look at things in the new normal, and to adapt in the best way we can do things for the future. As Socrates once said, the secret to change is not to burn all your energy and fight for the old, but to build the new. So with this, we will open our session and go to Ikram, CASA chairman. So this whole discussion we started with the shortage of equipment and the freight rates going up and the challenges that the exporters are facing. So for the layman to understand, what is this shortage really? What is it? Is it a man-made thing? Is it really due to supply and demand? What is your take about this?
I think this is not a man-made thing. This is basically a situation where the whole industry has had an impact, where during the COVID there was an issue pertaining to the clearance of cargoes, etc. in certain places. Space became abundant. Then there was a problem where certain shipping lines decided to cut capacity. Then the cargo started moving when China started coming back into the industry. Cargo started moving, ships didn't have space, shipping lines started putting more capacity, and then the cargo started moving from China, Far East into the Europe and USA. And then in Europe and USA, COVID started affecting those particular ports, and the cargo that reached those particular ports, there was delays in the clearance, delays in the ports, and the ships got stuck there. So when there is one-way traffic of cargo moving from Far East into Europe, and the ships getting stuck there, and on the return leg, the ships are delaying to come back into China and into the Far East, equipment getting stuck in the European ports, obviously there becomes a shortage of equipment, shortage of sailings, etc. in China. So I think that is the key factor of the space crunch that has resulted, and the equipment shortage. Added to that, obviously the demand and supply definitely kicks in there, because when there is severe demand, shortage of supply, the prices rise. So now when we see the Shanghai Freight Index, which is the general gauge of the industry, has shot so high, almost fourfold, fivefold, and people are paying freight rates of sometimes of $20,000 for a 40-foot container, all because of the shortage of equipment, shortage of space. So I think it's not a man-made thing, it's basically the major effect of COVID. Because when the cargoes arrive at the European ports, when the cargoes arrive in the USA ports, clearance is delayed, the return of containers are delayed, ships have to wait, and as a result, it has resulted in long delays of vessels turnaround, equipment turnaround, eventually the space crunch and the equipment shortage, and the net result is the increase in the price.
Thank you, Vikram. I think it's a very elaborate answer. Appreciate the response. Looking at it, Shamal, from a more global perspective, do you, as from representing the Slavo and the Lines, do you think it's purely because of COVID this is impacting, or do you see there are other reasons why it's impacting the industry?
No, Naveen, as Ikram correctly said, is COVID started everything, because of countries faced a lot of problems, even the ports, even the equipment going inland and returning back to the normally ports. So this is it started from China and is spread out to South Asia and then to Europe and then to US. So it's a matter of like it's more than 1.5 years now. So still this supply chain on the logistic is disturbed. So that's the main reason this the shortage of equipment and even the shortage of space, as correctly Ikram said. So this adding up time to time, different COVID waves coming up in different countries. You have seen the congestion in China due to COVID again, some ports. Now we have a serious situation in USA. So end 2020 we had serious situation in Colombo, November, December. So all these adding up. So this created this shortage of space plus the equipment, and then the basis the supply of demand, the rates is going up.
Thank you, Shamal. So Imalka, coming to you, representing the shippers and the importers in Sri Lanka. Now it's clear that space has become a big issue, and also the space. Even if you want to pay more, you don't have space. That's a bigger concern for all the exporters here. So in the context of this, do you see the local exporters losing their market share? How has it impacted them really?
Not really. We can't say that they will lose the market share, but of course there are enough and more challenges for them. Amidst the challenges that they are faced with the COVID pandemic, not getting the required space to reach their ultimate buyer is a huge concern. But when it's come to the contracted agreements, the forward contracted agreements, we don't see any challenge there because they are managing that situation. But the small scale operators, I would rather say, So they will have a definite challenge because they are booking the space case by case, where they don't see, they don't have either the futuristic demands, well in advance. That will not result in losing the market opportunity out of Sri Lanka, because most of the brands that they are working in Sri Lanka, they have their prerequisites when they are coming into a manufacturing origin. Right. So in this situation, we can't expect, we can't see them going out to a different country, evaluating those prerequisites. It's a long process. So in a situation like this, change in that nature overnight, we will not see. I mean, we will not expect.
Yeah. But the question is, if this continues, what is going to happen to our small timers who's trying to get the foreign markets and who's trying to aspiring to get to those foreign markets? What can we do then? What are the plans that Shippers Council has taken to safeguard their problems and to address these?
Actually, we have the best resource person over here in this forum to support us in this journey, because Port of Colombo being a major transshipment hub, and so the equipment, the land and the labor is being used in the Port of Colombo to do this transshipment job, and they have a moral obligation towards our country to get us more and more space, which they are fighting and doing at the moment, which is a great blessing to the trade. But with the help of the main shipping fraternity, we will have to pursue more, secure more and more space for them, like people like in that category. So we as the Shippers Council, we are always in connection with these parties, be it CASA, SLAFA, SLAO, SLANA. We are meeting each other in other various other discussions also. So we hear their side of the story and they can understand what is we are going through right now. So a continuous dialogue and and following up the wherever the possible space is available to capture and to secure the space. Other than that, I think until this total regional logistics supply chain bounce back to a normal situation, we will not see a drastic improvement in this piece of the operation.
Sure. I think it's commendable the efforts that is going on now with all the stakeholders getting together. I think we see as an industry that there's a lot of discussions, regular chats happening, which was not the case before. So I think there's some good news there where the industry stakeholders are now meeting and discussing on a lot of proactive measures as to how we can tackle this going forward. So I'll move back to Shamal to understand, from a lines perspective, is Sri Lanka attractive for them? We talk about the exports and we are talking about being an island nation. We want to somehow see how we can best promote our exports. But from a lines perspective, is Sri Lanka really attractive?
Yes, a good question, Naveen. I think as Imalka said that the required shipping lines help as well, because it's opportunity and blessings that all these mega shipping lines calling Colombo with all the big ships and having so much space. But we need to know the reality here. If you see last year throughput of Colombo with 7 million TUs, we handled transshipment 6 million and his import and export is only 1 million. So these ships are calling here for this transshipment cargo. Now when the ships calls Colombo for transshipment cargo, and if we want to get more space for Colombo cargo, we need to be in this region attractive on the rates and the costing. So are we doing this study? Because we are meeting, as he said, we are meeting every week for meetings and discussions with the authorities, with the government authorities, but we don't discuss this reality. We are really behind on the costings. That's because of the TSC matter. Because now in Port of Colombo we have enough empties. All 40 high cubes we got. We have the storage given here. We will be repositioning to India, Bangladesh to get their exports. So how can we get these empties for our local export, where we have increase in exports now, but giving these empties we need space. Now principal to convince give space to us, they will do a costing. They will say what is the freight rate from Colombo to Europe and USA, and what is the cost for them to reposition a 40-foot container, because mostly the export are on 40s, and what is the reposition cost, and what is the cost when they supply same equipment to India or Bangladesh. We don't want to take China, we take this region to India or China. So we are 75% more, because we need close to $500 cost is there for a 40-foot container reposition and loading back, because we need to pay the repositioning cost, we have to pay handling cost, we have to pay the depot cost, and then we have to pay again while loading, we have to pay the TSC to the port. Whereas when they send to India, it's not that. So when you going to ask principal the space, they will say, look here, we have enough cargo in this region, we are paying higher freight and cost is less. So your guys are what you are doing, whether you want space, we will give space, but then you need to match this. So this we need to sit and discuss. This is a serious concern. So if they want maybe any sector, maybe you want to promote apparel sector in Sri Lanka as export, or tea or rubber, wherever they want some concession, that they need to discuss with the government to get some concession. But when you tax shipping line will take maximum advantage of this situation. Or if you take all the shipping lines, we have brought a huge number of empty containers to support the. So we are trying hard, and we are requesting space for also our export. But then our hands are tied, because the decision is not locally made, decision is with the principal, and they think globally and regionally, and they take a decision. So we need to be definitely attractive in regionally, plus the rates, and then the lodge costings. So then definitely we can get the extra space what we want.
So Imarke, that moves the question back to you. Now the earlier days, what the problem, or rather the concern that was highlighted, is there was excess capacity. So as a result, the shippers were much in demand, so that we were saying bring down the cost, take certain costs out, give us an all-in rate. Now the tables have changed. So now there is a demand, the demand is more, and the lines have the command to decide whether they're going to give space or not. So in a context like this, have you all taken this message to the shippers locally to explain to them what the current situation is in terms of the trends, and to explain to them we can find the space provided we are willing to pay extra? Is that a solution to the exporters now? Has that been communicated? What is the stance there?
The market is already well aware of the situation, because as it was discussed by Ikram and by Shamal, the rates are being going up over the past 1.5 years. So the trade is very well aware that the situation that we were in 2020 January or February, we are in two far different extremes. Right? So the freight rates have gone up by 5 times than it was in early 2020. So and we as the Shippers Council also, we discussed it not in the numbers, but in general we discuss our monthly meetings also, and keep our associations informed, the member associations informed about the present rates and the trends. And but I think together we all were at one discussion where the government also came forward and said they are going to release 6,000 containers without charging the technical charges to support this situation. But those are the initiatives from the government side. And to answer your questions, whether we have informed the shippers, yes, they are aware, and we as manufacturers and as associations are aware of the situation, and we are paying already the increased prices. And I believe add into what Shamal said, the repositioning cost is, I believe it's already factored into the freight, so that the shippers are also getting that, incurring that cost already. But we understand, everybody understands the situation. Nobody can, just wait without somebody else to bear the cost and to stick on to the number that we would like to have. So there is that reality is no more there. We as the trade and the shippers, yes, we know the current situation, and we have to admit the fact that what has caused that, and what is the ground reality that brings us this situation. So it is the situation right now.
Right, thank you. So Roshan, from a logistician's perspective, how do you all see the opportunity therein? Because between a line and the shippers, you all play a bigger role in bringing these two parties together in providing value addition services, and to see how best we can support the trade. So from SLAFA's point of view, how does SLAFA and its members see this and to support the trade?
Yeah, Navin, they are like, okay, what has been in discussion here, so let me say the shippers are in the extreme left and the lines are in the extreme right. We are in the middle. We listen to them, we see what's happening on a daily basis. But the, as everyone knows and as what was explained, there is a supply chain clear disruption, right? So there are delays with the rail companies, the trucker shortages, clearance issues, port delays, so resulted in the delays in the vessels. So as Ikram said, it's a one way, so the containers are not coming in. And then there is also as everyone knows, there is the demand has gone up, consumption levels have gone up. So there is a clear, the balance, there is issue. So in order to do that, I would agree with Shamal, because what should happen is there should be a broader discussion, and we should think at least beyond December, and accordingly all should get together and plan. Because what has been happening is shippers, fair enough, because everyone wants to get the best rate, because when the Europe rates were at a level of about 500, we couldn't take it to 550. So but the same shippers are now paying $4,000. But what we really need to see is, as very correctly pointed out by Ikram and Shamal, what's happening in the other market, how much they are willing to pay. That's where we are trying to pay 5,000 if the other markets are paying 9,000. So we need to agree on that. We need to plan what's going to happen, because we work with almost all the lines and NUCCs on a daily basis. We try to ascertain what's the capacity to Australian sector, Europe sector, US, East and West. We see on a weekly basis it's coming down. So why it's coming down is due to the level of yield. So then we need to create a broader discussion, and then from the freight forwarders as well as the shippers together, we need to tell the lines, the main lines, and say we are willing to pay this and try and secure the space. Navin, I mean, that's what I clearly see, that because if that discussion does not happen today, they also can't make a decision. And then coming on to certain repositioning costs, we understand there are certain regulations in place. We have to work within those regulations, right? Even within the capacity of the SLAFA, we try to create a discussion, and even I try to speak to even the Shippers Council, say even in the short run, try and accommodate a repositioning cost if possible, because it makes sense. If we do that, so I think the main lines also could go back to their principles and say, yes, there is a regulation, but certain regulations based on the situations, we need to make certain changes. But unfortunately, we have not been able to get to that table and have a broader discussion for a clear benefit eventually of the exporter. So we see that because we talk to the both sides, because sometimes when we talk to the CASA or the SLAVO, the message we try to take it to the Shippers Council or the related associations, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So what I would like to say here is, Navin, all in all, we all are lucky we are in the right industry. I'm glad that we are not in the travel industry today. And also the logistics became an essential service in line with the medical and the security forces. So it's a trade which has a greater recognition today. So but what matters is, if we need to understand the bigger picture, and if we really everyone work towards that and try to secure the space for the country right now, as Shamal pointed out, things would change. But now for next 6 months, what are you going to do? We don't think next 6 months, we think next week, how many containers I'm getting. We need to see by April next year, 2020, what's going to happen. So we need to get their expert advice, Maersk to MSC to One to Hyundai, all lines, and NUCC operators. Get their opinion, trust them, respect them, and plan accordingly. It's the trust that we need to develop amongst not that it's not there, but we need to come to that discussion. I mean, that's the message that I can put it from the forwarder's point of view, because we see the both sides.
Fully agree. I think that opens up the discussion to bring in Slana to the topic. I think one of the key factors that we are facing here is the shortage of equipment. and representing the non-vessel operating common container carriers, there is a need gap that Slana is fulfilling. So for the benefit of everyone, Harsha, would you like to explain what the role of NVOCC in this context is and how they impact this in this situation? What's their impact?
Okay, thanks Naveen. Thanks for bringing in the NVOs. So NVOs are non-vessel owning container carriers. So we are agents who represent principals who own fleets of containers. So most of them are dry containers, some are our reefer containers, dry specials like flat tracks and open tops which carry project cargo, and then the ISO tanks, which is a liquid chemical waste and food grade cargo. So they are more regional players. I must say that's more regional. So in the context of Colombo and Sri Lanka, Port of Colombo, the NVOs around here are basically Indian, servicing the Indian subcontinent ports, including Pakistan, that is Karachi, Bangladesh, all the Indian based ports as well as inland locations, and Malay, even Maldives, and plays a big role in the Gulf as well. Some operate from the Far East, from the base ports in China, Vietnam, Bangkok, Singapore, Malaysia. So this is the region that when it comes to the NVOs who are represented in Sri Lanka operate in. So they have come in, I think for the short haul business, they have come in, there is more interest. We see that our principals are more active. Of course, with the main lines they are in the short haul as well, but they have taken a bigger interest in the long haul business because of the rising freight rates. Even in the short sea voyages, the freight rates have marginally gone up, of course, but not to the levels of the long hauls, which is the Colombo Europe, Colombo USA, and maybe Australia. But I must mention that NVOs also, like Shamal brought in the cost factor, which is a dying need for NVO operators, and because NVOs don't own vessels, so you use feeder vessels or sometimes even mainline vessels who have slot arrangements to bring in their containers to Colombo. So the THC factor and the slot rates and every other cost land based, it's trucking or depot costs, all that is a cost for our principals. So while they are in the trade, Sri Lanka, the cost recovery, the inability to recover costs, especially this THC, has been a dying issue for our membership since the last, I think, 6 years or so. So what I have to add to what Shamal said is, while legislation, in our view, our members' view, this has been hastily put in place a couple of years back to for the benefit of certain trades, which has now come back to bite them in the lack of equipment. Freight rates, yes, India to USA may be higher than Sri Lanka, but first of all, even to get the lower freight rate or the current freight rate, they have to have, the shippers need equipment. So the lack of equipment is the reason Shamal is telling that these THC recoveries and all not being there are not attractive for shipping lines and even NVOCC operators to position boxes here. Actually, NVOCC operators very rarely do empty repositioning because it's a costly affair. It's always a port-to-port import and export laden moves. We don't, what I can tell also about NVOs is that they don't focus on, say, one trade, one type of shipper, especially apparel, who are dominating our shippers' councils, are not our main customers. So I would say tea trade and general cargo, I mean things like chemicals due to the ISO tank. Our members represent about 50 ISO tank operators, which is worldwide. Actually, even though it's NVO, it's from worldwide locations that they have a service. And the tea trade, the NVOs go to destinations when there is wars and there is war risks and certain things where main lines sometimes do not call those ports. The NVOs kept on servicing those ports and giving our tea trade a lifeline actually in the many years to certain places. And the Middle East trade is perishables is another, Middle East to India, certain sectors I would say are dominated by NVOCCs. For example, the Nhava Sheva Colombo onion business, we have quite a good share, And I mean, at one point, for the 1 million import and export locals, which is only 1 million. I mean, sometimes in trade associations, people are led astray by saying that even with these kind of legislations, our imports and exports have grown, which I do not agree on. So it has not grown. It's grown very marginally. So it is the transshipment business that why the South Port is doing very well and the main lines are calling. It's for the transshipment. The locals have not grown in such a way. To do this container shipping business, something that shippers should know is there is a massive network in Sri Lanka, which includes setting up of inland container depots, which are billion-rupee investments, right? To make sure the importer returns the containers. Those are surveyed. There are certain criteria for that, and then repaired. And our exporters expect very high quality containers. That's another thing for tea, food grade, perishable cargo. So all that, and even garments. Yes. So all that is done, and the agent is responsible for these containers. So I wanted to add in that cost of a container also has gone up significantly. I would say even just like the freight rates, the costs. So these are rough costs, but 20-footer GP is about $4,000 today, maybe a brand new, and to get it down to Colombo it will be more. 40-footer also about $7,000. Reefers cost about $20,000. So and a tank is also $25,000 range. So these are things when an agent receives these containers, we are responsible for this, and we have to. There is a big role we have to play, and the big according to our legislation, very little we can hold the importer responsible if somebody does. We have a lot of other problems also because of COVID. There was a time where containers were held up in port, plus with importers, they didn't have facility to destaff, and a lot of problems. So this part of the industry also, I think more discussions like this should come about to educate, and maybe more people from the export and import industry should also join us to understand what a service is being done by especially the main lines and the NVOs as well.
Thanks, Harsha. I think what is important to understand and to create awareness to the shipping community, or rather the importers and the exporters here, is not just having the lines. I mean, even bringing down the containers, the imbalance, because most of the imports are coming in 20-footers and our demand is for 40s. And even on that, when you look at the type of containers that they need for tea grade and for garments, is different to the normal containers. So it's not just the lines calling here, but the equipment is a key matter in this situation. So with that, Roshan, now again there is discussions going that there is a fourth wave in China, and then some of the locations are shutting down. How do you think that would impact? Would that demand for Far East cargo to US drop, and whether we will get more space? Do you think that the trend will shift anytime soon?
I mean, it's difficult to predict, Naveen, but yet again, it's general thinking is if there is going to be a wave, it could eventually affect the production, the capacity. So then there would be more space for the other sectors. So I mean that can happen, and the more waves can come. But and also another thing that we hear from some of our buyers in say US and Europe, the lead times from say Indonesia or Philippines or say even China, even at the moment, even going up to about 6 months when they place an order. So our exporters are getting orders, and especially like there are food exporters. They are overloaded with the orders at the moment. But the question is the getting out, the moving it out. So answer your question naturally if there is going to be a wave, so there would be more space. But again, it could be temporary. So again, if I go back to my earlier explanation, what really matters is to plan ahead altogether and to see and understand and come to a mechanism to secure more space within the next 6 months to 9 months.
Thanks, Roshan. Shamal, moving back to you now, with this whole shortage of space, is it the shortage of space that we are worried about, or is it the shortage of equipment that we are talking about? Which is the most? And now we see most of the order books are getting filled up, although the deliveries are getting delayed due to the pandemic, and a lot of the shipyards are also taking more time to deliver ships. What is like the lead time for lines to get their container inventory if you're going in for new purchases? And is it really the shortage of ships, or is it really the shortage of equipment that is creating this situation?
No, now if you look at Sri Lanka, we were just discussing about the shortage of equipment, space for export. Now, concern to this, I think more important is the space released by the principal to Colombo loadings, because when you get a ship, we do about some ships about 7,000-8,000 moves in Port of Colombo, but how much local import export we are handling? Sometimes less than 500 boxes. So why is that? So because the space was allocated is less. Now they will supply equipment basis this space. Now we do a 1 month advance projection, equipment projection. Every agent will do and will submit to the principal requesting equipment. So they will check that equipment projection versus your space allocation. If you have less space, they will not give equipment anyway. So you need to fight for the space. Now how you going to fight for a space? You need to show principal that we are attractive in this region with the rates and also the costings. So we need to work out this. Then definitely I think, because principal point of view as a operation guy, I would like to say they are very much keen to accept Colombo cargo because of the lightweight. We can always top up a ship. We can always maximize a ship from Colombo with this. It's like a bonus, like Sri Lanka exports. So we need to think this angle, and we need to work on at least. We don't want to match freight from India or China, because every country have a different market setup. But we need to see the logistic cost, which is the killing part, because the comparing the logistic cost with the region, if we can match that logistic cost at least for a period, with at least we need to take certain strict decision. Maybe we want to change the law, we need to change the law, because which help on a long term benefit for the exporters. They can increase the exports, and country can benefit more with the foreign revenue coming in. So but these decision we need to take, like we should not delay this. We need to take immediately, because when we delay, the principal will take decision. They will allocate space long term basis to the various countries on the various services. Then it's very difficult to revise it. So we need to show them that okay, we are working towards this, and we also need space, and we also want our exports to increase. So this we need to discuss on the table, because when we try to discuss this, there's always a negative discussion. So we have to be silent, because we can't help. We will help with the space or equipment, but when we want to tell this, there's always objection. So if everyone is ready to discuss, I think definitely we can easily achieve this space problem.
So I think there's a lot to take from that point in terms of for the shippers as well, because we always harp complaining about the rates without understanding the background work that needs to go in, and the fact that we need to also compete in terms of within regions as well. Otherwise we become uncompetitive, and as a result space and equipment will not be made available to us. So I think there is a bigger discussion that we probably need to take up with the shippers and the importers in Sri Lanka, for them to understand that what the role of an agent is and what they do to make this possible. Otherwise the notion could be that we demand, so you give us equipment. It does not happen that way. So I think that discussion needs to go forward. So I think these discussions will facilitate that, and I think Youngship will also take a leading role in that to facilitate these type of discussions moving forward. One of the other reasons we see, Shamal, is vessel delays. I think that is also impacting a lot of vessel movements. The delays, is the port of Colombo congested today, or is it the impact on Far East that we are seeing that is impacting us? Because we see a lot of vessels omitting Colombo as well at times to catch the other schedules. What is the background on that?
No, Naveen, Port of Colombo is not congested. We don't call at present is congested. It's not congested. Mean you have so many ships waiting outside for berthing, and so the Port of Colombo at the moment running is well. All three terminals, thanks to all the management, and they were managing the situation. But if you see the yard capacities, all are beyond the workable capacity. But thanks to the innovative ideas and efficiency they put in, they are managing it, and so all three terminal plus ECT also managing it, and you can see compared not last year compared with 2019, our volume has increased, even Port of Colombo what we are handling it. So port is managing it well, but we need to bring some more services. We need to create more capacities. So that's opportunity is there, because we can see so many services are omitting at the moment Colombo. So this we can look into it. If you see the Port of Colombo, what we should work on for coming few months, because this COVID not going to end up within next few months. So we need to plan, as Roshan said, next 1 year ahead. So we need to have a short term plan and the long term plan. So this we need to discuss with on a table, and have a plan to even how the port going to function, and then how we are going to work out on this space and equipment. So coming back to your question about the delays, this is not related to Colombo. Actually, Colombo is very flexible. If you see all three terminal, 90% ships are arriving late, not on window. That because the other ports are congested and other ports are delayed. Now, if you see, so many Chinese ports are congested with this COVID situation, so ships are delayed, and so the ships not able to maintain the schedule. And when the ships goes to USA, and there are the issues, there's those ports as well. So then, if you see the round voyage, they can't maintain a schedule. So it's basically is coming to Colombo in a different day. Sometimes you have 20 ships, sometimes you have 40 ships. So then you need to manage your berthing per day accordingly. Terminal will be doing, and lines also adjusting the vessels ETA, and some ships maybe have to skip because have long delayed for berthing. So that's the delay mainly is not related to Colombo, and Colombo is really facilitating to shipping lines to reduce these delays by giving a lot of facilities. And at the moment, Colombo port providing this transshipment cargo, which our 80% of our business in Port of Colombo, they are managing it well, and providing accumulating cargo on the terminals because of this ship's delay, because the connectivity is delayed. So obviously the containers going to idle in the depots, in the terminals. So so this also they are managing, and so at the moment is Port of Colombo managing it okay without any congestion. But delays definitely because of the ships delays arriving to Colombo. So that was the main reason.
Okay, thanks, Shaman. So I think this creates a good platform for us to go back to our local traders to inform them. So the lines are giving assurance, saying that if you are willing to pay the price, we are willing to give you space and boxes. And from a terminal's perspective, the terminals are geared to handle the volume. So I think we are not all short of sorts. We have the options. So I think as an industry, we need to get together and then plan, as Roshan and Shamal and everyone suggested, that looking at the long term, it should not be a short term view, it should be on the long term, and then for us to have that common discussion. So with that, we'll go into the break now, and then we'll take up the second session. So coming back to Imalka, since we've got confirmation from the line operators and the logisticians that they're willing to take the challenge and give the space and the and make the equipment available. Other than for logistics, what are the other challenges that the importers and the exporters are facing in Sri Lanka today?
Well, looking at the present situation, number one would be the restricted imports into the country. So that has multiple effects to the total trade and the operations. Then I would say the certain government policies that they brought in to control the pandemic, that has another impact, right? Then the delays in making the payments to the foreign suppliers, that has a multiple effect. Especially they are losing the confidence over the importers in this country, because they are given 108 days credit, and even the payment goes, let's say, another 1 month's time after the date is due. So that has multiple effects. They are not shipping out the respective shipments into Colombo. Then it has multiple effects down the production line, right? So things like that. Then mainly those things are the points that I see at the present that hinders the importers or the exporters of the country, and mainly the fast spread of the pandemic that disturbs the planned production lines and the assemble lines, because today you are planned for, let's say, X number of assemble lines or manufacturing lines, but if you get into when you get in the real ground ground floor, the ground situation, suddenly there are 2 lines that you have to close down because of the situation. So your output is limited. You can't meet the customer's requirements. Another bunch of issues. So if those are the main points that I see today. Other than the logistic matters, this is what hinders us.
Another question that came up is the GSP Plus scheme. European Union pulling off the plug on us. Is there any measures that Shippers Council is taking to have discussions with the government to see how best we can address this to get the quota back? What is the stance there?
My answer would be twofold. We as the Shippers Council and as manufacturers, as the Shippers Council, as our mission states, right? We are expect to do good advocate to the government to handle such a situation as it arrives. So they are highlighting the possible challenges that the trade or the manufacturers would go through, and the challenges that will come through losing that sort of a facility, and what sort of a monetary impact that it brings to the country. We can highlight it to the government and lobby as a recognized body. Then suggesting possible measures to control or to bring up another backup plans to cover those losses. So those are the main things that we can do as a council. But we as shippers, we also have a responsibility in there, right? Without depending only on this particular matter, where it looks at a sectorial financial development, we as shippers can and should must develop our capabilities and the potential to bring in certain other points which are beyond the general financial transactions, which is like the innovations into the product that we do, and the lead time that we supply, and then basically going into partnership that is way beyond the financial transactions, right? Looking the customer in general terms, right? How do we look in the customer? Those are the things that we can bring into consideration. And overall, when it's come to the sectorial financial developments through a program like this, it comes with prerequisites when it's come to a country, right? So it is high time to the government to rethink and see whether the GSP Plus that we are talking about, the impacts it brings to the sovereignty of the country, and without banging on to the EU side of the world, why can't we look at a country or a market like China, right? Let's say Japan, and to develop the existing agreements like APTA, or to come up with new agreements when it's come to Japan. Things will have to be looked at in a different manner. Otherwise, hanging on to the GSP Plus and fighting for that will not be the only way out from this problem. So that's how I look at it.
Roshan, if I come back to you on this, now from a logistics point of view as well, I think the 3PL has moved to 4PL, now we are talking about 5PL coming in and e-commerce. How is the local logisticians taking up these technological advancements? Are we ready for that? Are we equipped to handle it?
Navin, I think it's a very good question, I think, which again need a broader discussion, but it again, other than talking in different forums and different levels, I mean, there are companies within logistics. Now say, if you look at, let me have a different approach now, say, if you look at the logistics industry in Sri Lanka, you have the global giant representation of global forwarders, and also the large conglomerates here, and then the local companies which has evolved, and SMEs, right? So I mean, if you really look at the start, it's purely just a track and tracing, but now the business have moved from B2B to B2C as well, so there is evolution. So but I would say even at the association level, educating its members to work towards certain directions, there are no programs, right? So this needs a clear direction. So at the moment, I mean, if you look at even SLFA, we have 135 forwarders, and then there are close to 300 forwarders registered with the DGMS as licensed freight forwarders. And how many local forwarders are really on a drive towards the technology advancements and developments or digitalization? I would say I mean, less than maybe 5% or 10%. So this is an area that we really need to look at it. But if you really look at the liner shipping, so again, say a liner like Maersk, right? So we know how things have changed. So it's purely now system booking, spot or the twill or whatever it is, right? So the other lines also could go into that. But forwarders, logisticians has a better market. So if we, for example, hypothetically, if there is a platform where the back-end integration can be created with the liners, on number of lines on the various sectors, as well as the consolidators, as well as the air freight. So the forwarder is in a position to give a one-stop shop, I mean the solution for the customers. But the efforts towards that and where we are right now on that, we are at a very primitive stage, so which needs development.
Harsh, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I would like to add on to that, because in many of our forums, there are deconsolidators, as you know also, and they have shown interest in having a public-private partnership to run warehouses. So to add on to that, that would be a value addition, and I think they have the know-how, maybe backed by their international principles, and those are also small opportunities to be a hub port. They have been lobbying, I think, to get into, you know, inside port warehouses, which they, and healthy competition, which will finally give out better rates also to the importers or exporters. So that's one point that I'd like to bring in.
Roshan, with this day being established by the government itself, would this give the opportunity to set up the next round of discussions to address these concerns with the government, getting support to include logistics into the national curriculum, so that that can be taken from that point onwards and then develop it, and then to take it forward in terms of developing the employees of these organizations and grabbing these opportunities? Do you see a way forward?
I think the declaring a day as National Logistic Day is a great move, and as I pointed out, the logistics have got a lot of prominence during last 2 years, so which is a good sign. So that's a very important area. And also I would like to touch there also on this National Logistics Award program where we have initiated. So that is, though it's initiated by SLFA, I think that's a project in time to come all stakeholders should take together, right? It should not owned by one association. I mean, then the CASA to Slavo to Slana, everyone together, even with the support of the shippers, that's a project. That would help to uplift the standards of the industry. So logistics is a very key area, and that need to be taken forward with these activities. And coming on to the education point, what you pointed out, I mean, we were just discussing during the break. So that's I think with the efforts of many, right? So now there are certain modules within the A levels syllabus for the related to the logistics. Shamal was talking about it. And but yet again, I believe it's restricted to, Shamal, maybe only about 40 hours of work. So the next is to get into the ordinary level. So different forums, these things have been discussed, but to get it to the ordinary level, we have no resources, because then if we get a subject to the curriculum of ordinary level, then you need to, it should be an island-wide program. So you need to have hundreds of teachers. So but yet again, that's the direction to which we need to go for this. Then National Logistics Day, I mean the Logistics Day, as well as National Logistics Award, where all stakeholders should take it forward, and all these things, and then getting into the ordinary level curriculum. So then awareness programs, and we as an industry, this is the direction that we need to go for. I mean, that's a great move.
I think being logisticians, we should be able to find the ways to get through to the villages and to spread this around, because I guess nowadays a lot of children are now getting used to these online platforms and also presentation modules for them to go through, rather than being used to a teacher coming in front of them and taking them through. So maybe what we can do is also to see is we can probably do certain modules, record it, and then get it across. Even they could even probably put it on a TV and then take them through, and then we could do like one person would go and just do a lecture covering all those aspects and ask him if there are any questions. So if we are serious about it, probably we can find ways, but I think the first move is to get the day registered. It is done now, which is a great move, and the fact that now these discussions are coming up and the industry peers are willing to support this. And I know some other companies have already taken giving internships to some other graduates who are coming out, so which is a very good move and to support the industry. Harsh?
I'd like to mention even Chartered Shipbrokers, Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, who have done a yeoman service for, of course it's not the A-level students, it's they are after, but even knowledge of people in our officers and agency officers, logisticians, and even for shippers and importers, they are diploma programs and then full qualification. It's a very good thing.
I think even from the DGMS point of view, they've made it mandatory for the international logistics companies to have staff who's done their basic exams. I think it should be brought down to other levels as well, so that we have a quality staff to cater to the growing demands and requirements. Coming from that, I would come to Ikram to understand, is the shipping and logistics industry adequately regulated? Are we current? Are we prepared to take the challenges in the future?
I think first and foremost, when you say regulation, there are two aspects to it. One is the regulation for the ease of doing business, and the other thing is regulation of the entities within that particular industry. But if you look at the regulations for the ease of doing business, I think we are I think we are doing a disservice to business because of the various blocks that we're having. One is the policy changes, customs issues, all those things, because nothing assists business as I see it. I think in respect of the regulations for the industry, yes, I think we have certain regulations which are certainly to ensure that companies maintain certain standards, certain levels, certain norms, etc. I think that is already done. So that when you try to over-regulate it, also it sort of kills the industry. But I feel the regulation is adequate for the industry itself. What is important for the country to grow, to promote logistics, promote the maritime hub status, promote business, is that they need to ease a lot of these regulations that we have in the red tape. If that doesn't happen, we can dream of a maritime hub. It will never occur, because as you see, even the hub status bill that was brought in and that was promoted so much, there are so much of blocks that are there. So I think when you bring in certain regulations, I think everybody should fall in line. Everybody should sort of support it, because you're bringing in the hub status, you're bringing in the various activities to promote business within the country. Because if you have the blocks like that, the investors who are bringing in the money, who are bringing in the business, who are bringing in the resources and bringing in the technology are not going to come. So I think that is very critical. And unfortunately, the change that we are seeing of bringing the ease of doing business is very, very slow. And despite the various governments that have come in promising the ease of doing business, I think what we don't see is a smooth flow, and that has to change.
Thank you, Vikram. I think I recall we had so many discussions in terms of setting up a maritime policy. We took Singapore as an example and tried to have a one-stop shop where an investor comes into the country, where customs, the respective regulation, the DGMS and all the authorities are there, so that there is one place for them to go and you tell them exactly what is needed, and at that point they can decide whether to bring the investment or not. What happened to that document? There was a lot of effort being put by the various associations. I think a similar document was prepared by SLAFA and the logisticians as well. So any progress made on that? Is there any side to it?
I think from a maritime policy document, I think unfortunately what happens is whenever government comes in, they put in a policy and then the government doesn't follow that, or it basically goes into the bookshelf. I think there have been several maritime policies, several shipping policies that have come in. A lot of experts get in, sort of time is spent, and that is all shelved. I think the last maritime policy that was done, I think all government experts got in, the private sector plus the government got in. Then there came to a block saying, sorry, it's not on. They need to change the policy, and now it's a non-starter now. I'm sure that there will be another maritime policy that will be started by this government, and when we'll see the light of day of these maritime policies is questionable.
That's a sad news for us, but Roshan, anything you want to add on this aspect?
No, that's the ground reality, unfortunately, Naveen. But yet again, we can't give up hopes. So as stakeholders, we need to try and see how best that we can push it. And then there is another document, as you correctly pointed out, National Export Strategy, the document prepared, where SLAFA was part of that with the EDB. It's a comprehensive document done after much studies been done, and lot of efforts, lot of time, lot of hours were spent on that. So I would say certain areas are getting implemented, but not the level of speed that we would like to see. I mean, looking at the things, the level, the speed on which things happens in the private sector, that's not the way that we would like to see that. But yet again, certain things are coming up. So through the discussions and stakeholder involvement, so we should be able to work towards them.
And just to add to what Roshan said, that the National Export Strategy is a fantastic document. I think it has gone, a lot of in-depth study has been there under the auspices of the EDB. I think all of us were part of the advisory committee in logistics of EDB, because logistics is a part of that National Export Strategy. And I think for 2 years we tried to meet authorities, meet stakeholders, just to say, look, this is what we need to do. Unfortunately, we were not even able to go beyond the meeting, because I think a lot of certain people don't consider that, I would say, as priority. So that is a sad part of all these strategies that we do and all these documents that we do. So I think people need to change that.
I think the plus side to things is the fact that now a lot of discussions are happening now with this whole COVID impact. I think there's more discussions happening with the government, the ministers get involved, and so I think there's a lot more traction than before. I think they've given focus, because with the current status we are in terms of getting more for USD coming into the country, I think there's a lot more that this industry could do, where the investments or the foreign revenue to come into the country rather than us pumping it out. So I think that is something that we can probably use it to our benefit, and to take these discussions up, because all the documents are already done. And the fact about this whole hub concept, it's been discussed over and over again, and I think it's hacked now. but even if you go back to history, we've been in a hub. So I think that's the whole concept behind. It's evident that we need to convince the government to establish a policy. Irrespective of who the government is, the policy has to continue. I think that's the message that we all have to take from here. The next point is we've discussed about the charges and all that, but I think the recent development is the DO fees which came into light. I think different parties have different views, but I think we would like to make this a forum to get their different views, to understand how it will impact the business, whether it will further create issues for the lines or the NVOCCs who's always been highlighting the lack of charges. But from a shipper's point of view, they see it as a positive. But I would like to hear it from you all to see how does the market perceive this and your thoughts on this.
Okay, that's a timely question, and thanks for posting it. The very reason, if you really look at the reason as to why it was brought in, before this was brought in, there had been 40 odd surcharges or additional charges that are levied to an import of this country, where it went up to about 50 to 60,000 rupees to collect a delivery order from a service provider. So if you put it into the practical aspect, the kilo of dal that you purchase from your next door shop, or 1 kilo of sugar, so that boils down into that aspect as well, right? So it has a contribution to the cost of living in this country as well, right? So we as a association, we believed that it has to be controlled, where because when it's come to the cost involved in bringing down a shipment into Colombo, when you pay 50,000 rupees as a DO fee alone, how are you going to trade in this country, or how are you going to run a business in this country? And with that, we actually welcome this move. We as shippers, as manufacturers, and it is obvious that there are positive and negative comments to this move. So which is a good sign, because we have discussions to ascertain and to understand the decision that was given by the DGMS, whether it's right or wrong. The discussions are going on, but still, but we as an organization or an association, we welcome that, and we see the importance of having a complaints handling committee that was set up with that document is another good move, because now there are even after the regulation is or the direction is given by the DGMS, there are enough and more forwarders or shipping lines that charge more than what is expected to be charged to a consignee, right? So to evaluate that and to understand what the reason behind, and what can you do from that point onwards, setting up a committee comprised with the stakeholders of this total value chain is a really good move. So that is and basically the regulating the structure of charges is what has brought in, and we as an organization association representing the majority of shippers in this country, we welcome that.
Roshan, your thoughts on this?
Much debated and discussed subject, Naveen. Now say till about 2012, 2013, the industry operated as a self-regulated industry. There were no regulations. But if you ask my opinion, my association opinion or my personal opinion, we should allow the free market forces to prevail. The industry should not be regulated. So that's point number one. Leaving that aside, now the regulations are there. So if the regulations are there, and then the other question is how these regulations came in. So there are stakeholders, service providers and service receivers. So the regulations on service providers came in without any consultation on the service providers, right? So the next day when you get up in the morning, it's regulated. So there should have been a consultative approach, which is not there. So the regulations were brought in. But the reasons for regulations to come in, what Imalka pointed out, agreed, some were charging exorbitant charges. But then again, it's a question of many or few. It was few. So even look at sometimes the protests, it's few, but the environment get disturbed. So but anyway, regulations came in. So then through the regulations, then all the stakeholders, service providers got together, and again many were adhering to the process. So, but after about 6 or 7 years now, then we looked at the market, we all realized, yes, there are again exorbitant high charges being levied on the customers. So then we had the requirement of revisiting and making sure all fall in line, right? So that is where maybe from last December up to now there have been lots of discussions. So this new circular was issued. So there are, I mean, if you look at the liner part, main liners or the NVOCCs, and the another point is the LCL charges, that's for the consolidators and the freight forwarders. Number of sections were discussed. So the SLAFA's point of view when it comes to this new regulation which came in, yes, we welcome. That is to live within the regulations, because otherwise who go by the law get suffered, right? So and then still there are areas to be sorted out, because there are parties who have grievances, right? So there are SMEs. So there are companies who does the certain areas, say the consultation in a smaller way, but there are companies who live on the consultation, and say even if you look at so NVOCC operators, there are charges which you got to pay to certain things. Then the point what I want to highlight here is, that is point number 1, we are against regulations. You should allow the free market forces. Number 2, if the law is there, you need to comply. I mean, you need to adhere by the law. But having said that, all parties need to be reasonable and also you should be willing to revisit the law if that to be changed for the benefit of the industry, certain stakeholders. But if you say this is law, there's nothing can be done, this is law, then we are trying to create another disturbance. Within, again, the same question of unity and the respecting each other should come in, and if we need any amendments, we should sit together with an open mind for the correction. So that's
your points. What about CASA?
I think the CASA's point of view has been very straightforward. Whilst we do agree that there were various charges being levied which eventually brought in this law, I would say, through the back door. But now that the law is there, what I feel is that how it's being enacted is totally unjustified, because the law says a shipping line can charge a documentation fee, and if they got to increase it, they got to make a request to the Director General Merchant Shipping. Nowhere in the law does it say that the Director General Merchant Shipping can shove a fee down anybody's throat. So he can't fix rates. So it has to be a rate that has been filed by the shipping agent. So that's where CASA stands aside with the direction that has been given. What we are saying is, look, by all means, if we want to increase the price, okay, we make a request. Either the DGMS accepts it or not. But please permit us to charge what we have filed, because the law doesn't say that the DGMS has the right to control or fix rates. But in respect of the grievance process, yes, we fully accept it. I think the grievance process has to be there, because there has to be, if somebody is being overcharged, he has the right to report it to the authorities and find a suitable response to that. And action should be taken against whoever has done the wrong thing, which we find is also lacking, because, okay, if somebody is overcharged, the DGMS has all the right to penalize him and say, look, if you do it, we will fine you, or we will cancel his license or something to that effect. But if there is nothing of that sort happening, then the law also becomes without teeth. So I think whilst we do accept certain regulations need to be there, also more than that, I think free market forces should prevail. I think CASA's point of view has been very firm, saying, look, If the law says we can file a rate, we should be able to file a rate and charge that, not somebody telling us what to charge.
Shamal,
Yeah,
you
I
need
do
to say
agree
names?
with I do agree with Kasa Ikram and partly with Roshan what he mentioned that we need to look at it. If there's a problem, we need to look at it whether it is few or more. I think this is few who are in the trade charging these exorbitant charges. And I want to correct Himalka also. He mentioned about the shipping lines, but none of the shipping lines are overcharging. So they are even the circular with the new circular with the DGMS, we can increase actually, but still we have not increased. None of the shipping line has increased because we feel is something wrong in this circular. So shipping lines are very fair, like we have been charging for the last few years the same rate. But again, Naveen, as Ikram also correctly mentioned, we need to all must understand this shipping is international business, and when we try to regularize this all these charges locally, just thinking locally to support one side, are we going out of internationally the competition? So this is the main concern. So we need to look at before we do this, we need to study what's happening in Dubai, what's happening in India, what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in Singapore. So we need to do a proper survey, which I recommend to DGMS. You do an individual survey, you study everything, and then you try to propose something. Because when you issue a regulation, we need to circulate to our principals, and they question back us, what is this, why is this? In this situation, with this COVID situation, nowhere in the world is having such sort of a strict regulation coming in, because everyone is finding difficult to do business, surviving the market. Now with this regulation, because of few culprits, maybe majority of these SMEs forwarders going to suffer. So this is the question. So in case as Himalka said, some are charging exorbitant charges, why the consignee is booking through him? So he can inform the shipper, don't send the next shipment because he's charging 60,000 rupees DO charges. So please don't use him. So you can use direct line, you can use forwarders who charge fair amounts. So why you try to regulate something which entire world is not done? So which bring very negative aspect again about Sri Lanka, and I think it's low now, but we need to revisit it, because I feel there's a unfairness. And as far as shipping lines, we are not affected and we are not overcharging it, and we are actually supporting the forwarders when we issue the master DO by maintaining still that lower amount, and we are ready to continue with that. But the main thing is we need to look at it, the high number of SMEs, the small time forwarders who are in the business for a longer period, now finding difficult for them to retain their staff, because the revenue has dropped because of this. And so this is going to be a major impact, because maybe high number of staff going to lose their employment. And also I think we need to strengthen the law here, because if you have 10-15 containers, you can start up a NVO company. So we need to categorize NVOs A grade, B grade or C grade. So we need to see, if you see the all reputed NVOs, which including Harsha knows that, and they do a reasonable business and they don't do this. But there are few guys just coming up with a computer and saying, I am having a 10 containers, I am opening up a NVO and charging DO fee 50-60,000. So these are the areas we need to catch. So that's we need some sort of a control with the DGMS, and then I think it's not a serious matter to legalize charges, because I think majority 75% is charging usual charges, and only few charge exorbitant charges. And this the proposed complaint handling association, all representatives are there in that. So that association can handle this, then easily can identify this who are charging high, and then we can DGMS can warn. We don't want a law for that. So when you bring in a law and you are putting internationally, showing them again, you are controlling collection to international business.
Thanks. I think Slana has made a lot of voice in this matter and then already written to DGMS on this. So, Harsha, what is your opinion?
Yeah, to add to what Kasa, Ikram and Shamal said, we are also with a similar thinking that actually it has impacted NVO agents the most. This recent ruling, which was a notice, I believe. So, our governing authority is the Director General Merchant Shipping. He has been doing a good job, and you do need some governance, of course, and I think during the lockdown especially, most of us involved in special committee meetings at the port, and that there was a lot of pressure given in defense of DGMS also, I must say, that he was asked to flex his muscle and come up with certain rates for even demurrage and various other things. But when it comes to the DO fee, we are also very strongly on the opinion that since DGMS is the lawmaker and that people who have filed rates with them, and those can't be disregarded. So suddenly overnight, again due to pressure by importers, those filed rates, which after the filing of the rate, the annual license is being issued to NVO agents, it is more or less disregarded. It's up in the air. So and a regulation comes in which has hit us where our members are hard hit, and actually where else a mainline got a benefit there by de facto. So while there are people who overcharge, yes, I have also seen in the complaints committee wild overcharging, those things have to stop. And there are rogue operators like it may be a NVO, it may be a freight forwarder, LCL, DO, it could be anything. Not very unlikely it wasn't a main line, I must also say that. So those things DGMS can take a strong stand, but then bringing in legislation without also for NVOCCs, our charges, because it's in discussion, I don't want to mention any rates, but we will go back and we will get our charges. I will work on that, because he is the authority. When he sees the valid points which were given to him before 5 years ago and agreed upon, have again overnight vanished. So and one rule for all, main lines and NVOs are completely different. Yes, we are box operators, but it's a completely different operating model. That's what we have been saying. And niche areas, and Sri Lanka needs NVOCCs. I think not much paper articles or studies have been been written about this and how we engage with perishable cargo, project operators, again liquid, and the tea industry. So these we will show more about what our partnering industries are, and the importance of having fair play in these industries as well. And I must mention that yes, there are many of the NVOs so-called are now the top NVOs. Most of them are owned by feeder lines. They also have it may not be connected, but the same ownership. They are developing their own NVOs. So top feeder lines, almost every feeder line has an NVO arm. Plus there are independent huge meaning NVO size huge, 50,000-60,000 TEU carrying independent operators. And as Shama says, yes, there are some small players also. So the way I see as the association to handle that is, you can't restrict who's sending the box, SOC box. Even a Sri Lankan operator can buy 30 boxes and start sending it around, but it's the agent. You can have reputed agents who are under the DGMS guideline, and then through the agent you control that this overcharging is not happening, and give a fair play so that this continues in the future.
All right, so I think we got a mixed bunch of views, but I think the point is that they are okay for the governance part of it, but what he is trying to say is don't penalize everyone for few people's mistake. So I think that's the point that we have to take. But these are ongoing discussions, so it's not over yet.
Yes, and there can't be one law for every suits all in no country, and without deep understanding of shipping. I think that is what is needed in the future. So to bring in laws and legislation overnight to facilitate one part. I mean, here it's not one segment, but maybe it's importers. But still, you have to see what are the other service providers. Their issues. And Naveen, one more thing which is a new normal is due to the banning of various goods from being imported. We are seeing people are getting special approvals and then getting them down. Then their line ministry is approving it. Then some other people are disapproving it. And then there is more. We see stagnant containers or uncleared containers in the port, which is, I think Shamal is the expert in this area, because as NVOs we have close to 100 boxes which are lying and uncleared by customs since so many years, and it's increasing rather than decreasing. But of course the customs DG and the DDCs have had special meetings with all of us to try and sort this out, but it's taking up space. I have seen Shamal mention this in numerous, I think the total figure is over 800 I believe, through CASA and main lines. So this is another adding problem where detained containers has to be approved by, has to be focused on, and a solution given to the agents for fast release, which also reflects, as Shamal has always said, on the shipping lines outlook on the hub port status of Colombo, where we have to give solutions to return, because the line now, the box value I read out earlier, the values have gone up in the last 2 years. The box has appreciated, I think, in double or more the value of a box. So when it's stuck, a reefer box, even if it's stuck, it's not a acceptable practice by our principals, who are putting a lot of pressure on the agents to get these released. Actually, I'm having files I have personally handling to try and get these cleared.
I think Shamal, I think you have a lot of experience on this, about these abandoned containers and these long stay. How's your experience, and what's the message that you have to give to the importers in Sri Lanka to get these out fast, and what should they follow?
No, Naveen, this is not a subject to discuss. I think there are two areas. The abundant cargo, as Harsha said, there are some containers lying for years, 5-6 years, due to various reasons. The
license maybe.
Not mainly the license, maybe wrong declarations, and the various customers detained on suspicion, and then the investigation is carrying forward, and it was not over. So then when you have an investigation, the container and the cargo is as a product, and there's no warehousing facility for them to de-stuff and release the container. So cargo is inside a container for years and years. So maybe we have several discussions with the custom, and current custom DG retired Major General Pravipri has promised, and he helped us several times. We had several discussions, and he's trying to expedite. And we discuss, even have a salvage sales. If you say tiles, 100 containers, we put a tile containers and then put a date, and we'll try to auction and clear those containers. But with this COVID situation in the port, and with everyone is busy, so it's still keep on delaying itself. But we need to find a solution for these long idling containers, because we have highlighted two areas. One is these cargo keep on idling and occupying the space, which is very, very important for us now, the port 3 terminal space, and then we don't have a separate custom area to store these containers. That is also important. So it's again occupying the port area and the warehouse areas, and then there can be undeclared DG cargo inside this, and there are DG containers also. I heard that they're still idling. So these can be another Beirut situation, like we never know when can be a disaster situation inside the port. So we need to take certain action. Even we have seen some few reefers were plugged for years and years, so which again we are wasting electricity. But when there's a case, the terminal cannot unplug it. So we need to identify these critical areas, critical cargo, and take immediate action. And then the other cargo, you need to find whether we can de-stuff or whether we can auction it. So that's the plan for the long idling. But with this current situation since last year and this year with the COVID, the consignees are facing various problems. Mainly they face with the financial difficulties sometimes to clear the cargo, and so then they will not able to get the BLs, and then not able to get the DO from the shipping line, so cargo is idling. And then after about few weeks the charges accumulated even in the port storage and even the liner demurrage, so then there will be further difficulty in clearing it. So this trend has increased now. So there are a high number of local import recent past as idling, because consignees has not clearly mentioned to the shipping lines they are not going to clear, but is idling because they are not able to clear due to various reasons, documentation or financial or whatever. So this I think is alarming situation, because this again eating up space on the 3 terminals, and then when it get charges accumulated, is very difficult for Port Authority even to auction and cover that charges, or maybe find a solution for that. So we last year we had this COVID task force meeting, and we discussed and we find immediate solutions. I think we need to again start up similar discussions, and we have to bring a import team from the chamber, and then discuss and find some solution for this. And if they want some concession, we can try to do that, because last year we given huge concession for the importers to clear the containers. So there can be, we need to have some sort of a discussion. We can't keep this problem just lying inside the port.
So I think with this we come to the end of our session, with the final question being open to the forum. I think it's clear that we need to have a more common approach to understand the requirements, because everyone is supportive. It's just that at certain decisions have impacted a few, because of few everyone else has got impacted. But on the long run, or the takeaway from this discussion is that everyone is willing to support. I think one clear answer that we got from Shamal was the fact that the lines are willing to give space. Are you willing to pay the price for that? So that's like a good thing. And then Harsh highlighted the fact that the NVOCCs are also in here for serious business, and there's a lot of potential there. CASA, SLAFA shares the same sentiments on that, and I think from the Shippers Council perspective also, the shippers are, we need to support them to get more long-term contracts, and to support them to add value to Sri Lankan exports, and to see how we best can support. So I think it's all positives which has come from this discussion, I think, which is good. And we as Young Ship would like to facilitate more discussions to facilitate these needs and to take this to the next level. So as closing remarks, would you like to share your views on how do you propose for such matters to be discussed jointly and to take it forward? Is there anything that you would like to add?
If I may start it, yeah. I mean, first of all, thanks Shamal for correcting me regarding that DO charge matter. It's not the lines, to be precise. It's a identified set of forwarders who charge these unethical charges, and it's on the line. But whatever I have heard, that there had been lines even who had released the DOs without any charge also, right, in the trade. But it's not a common behavior. But thanks Shamal for highlighting that. And let's again, due to some few set of people who does this mistake, the majority would have had a hit. I mean, but it has come to a point now, a proper guideline has been issued by the government, which is being discussed with the consultation of various other stakeholders. And during what I understood during the last the complaints handling committee, there are 120 odd complaints lodged by various importers of this country about these exorbitant charges. So there is a problem. That's why a rule has brought in. So whether a change is needed, it's open for discussion, because we can't seal the situation. Okay, we have achieved and you have to follow by. There's nothing like that, I believe. It's a democratic country. We have to have our own opinion. So we will. I mean, we as trade partners will have to take this forward. As a unite body, so that everybody ends up in a win-win situation. And so that's it from my end, basically.
Thanks, Imelda.
Thank you.
Prashant?
Okay. Navind, I think the COVID last 2 years created a lot of opportunities as well for logistics trade. And then, as you all know, there's a committee formed at the very beginning, the COVID task force, and we all were part of that. I mean, the first challenge, if I recall, was to get the curfew passes to go. Right. Starting with that, there have been a lot of discussions. And then even now, under the DGMS, there's a recommendation committee being formed right? So my closing remarks, as I pointed out before, now since these committees have been formed, so service users, service providers, all are there. Now say if you look at SLAFA, as I pointed out, we are in both sides. Now we are in the executive committee of Shippers Council as well. So we see the both sides. So what matters is, I mean, with the respect for each other, and if we can clearly develop a lot of trust, we could solve a lot of problems together. And then that should be the message that we need to take forward. I mean, that is what I want to keep on table before I conclude. Thanks.
Thanks, Roshan.
From a CASA perspective, Naveen, I think first and foremost, we work for the industry. We also want to ensure that the Sri Lankan industry, that is exporters and the whole logistics industry, are able to sustain themselves and grow, and also ensure that Sri Lanka as a maritime hub grows. So I think we are very supportive of all that, despite all the constraints, because at the end of the day, if the export industry grows, if the import industry grows, if the logistics industry grows, we as agents also will benefit. On a principal's perspective, yes, for them they look at cost, they look at revenue, they look at the ease of doing business. So we have to balance all that. So by all means, having discussions and all that is fine, but then again, decisions have to be made, right decisions have to be made, and we must ensure that we are able to go forward, not have stumbling blocks. So I think as far as CASA is concerned, we would like to work with all the stakeholders, because we are part of the industry, and we definitely are dependent on them, and they are also dependent on us.
Thanks.
Yeah, Naveen, I agree with Roshan what he mentioned, that it is there are some opportunities due to this COVID. We should not take it negatively, and we need to work on positively. Is one good thing is that as association, even the lockdown period, we met several times, we start discussions, and I think this need to be continued more healthy manner. I think before we go to an authority and discuss something, all the association with the Chamber of Commerce and the Shippers Council, we should be able to sit and discuss and agree to something, because I think otherwise it's not going to be a win-win situation for the both sides, because you have seen now when regulation coming in where we are going to get stuck, then we are helpless, we couldn't help you, because there are some fundamentals in shipping in Sri Lanka. We need to understand that our the 70% is imports and 30% is export, and then also the equipment imbalance. You have to see that we have a huge equipment imbalance for export. We are 20-foot dominated import country, and we are short of high cube, so we need to bring empty high cube to support export, which we need again shipping lines blessings, and so it's the cost recovery, logistic costing is very important. So this is the important factor. We have to table it now. We need to sit and discuss, and then we can go to authorities and say this is what we would like to have. So then if all the association and the Shippers Council and the Chamber of Commerce are agreed, I think definitely the changing even any law is not a problem, because the gazettes are out overnight, so any gazette can be revised and we can have, because it's going to benefit the local exporters, importers and shipping lines. That's where I think we need to focus on.
Thanks, Shamal.
So NVOs also have stepped in. I'd like to mention that NVOs, the principals, have stepped in to pick up the slack created by maybe the congestions or the lack of equipment of main lines, and the focus being on long haul, the short haul and the regional trade. So we are also, of course, for the importers and exporters without whom the trade will not happen. We would like to see the trade grow in volumes, in actual volumes. More people coming into the export field, especially. I think we have seen in some of the NVO controlled areas, foodstuff going to the Middle East increase in the last couple of years. So that's a good sign, and that is Sri Lankan exports is one of the main areas. So while saying that, we are also happy about the ongoing discussions. We get to know each other, we work with each all associations, our customers as well. However, my personal view, I have to add one more to that, and I think most of my members' view also, after the 40 odd SLANA members, is that one-sided legislation should change. There is no time and place anymore in this new normal for one-sided regulation. Like Shamal said, I am also 100% with that view that legislations can be there. People are quoting that and stifling the cooperation and growth. So those have to change, and at the highest level we'll have to get involved, in the sense from the ministry levels, from the, I would say the minister levels, and even the when it comes to customs, the director general levels, and all have to look at solving immediate problems of the new normal. And if legislation is what's blocking that, that has to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think this comes to the conclusion of our session today. I would like to thank you all for accepting our invitation as Youngship, for coming today despite the COVID challenges that we've had and the increasing trend of COVID in Sri Lanka. But we've had a very successful session. I think this will carry a good message to the shippers and the importers in Sri Lanka. The fact that Shippers Council is representing their interest clearly, and it's been heard by the service providers here, and they're willing to support. I think that's the key message out of this whole session, where we can support you on the space, we can support you if you're willing to pay the price. We are not determining the price, it's that the industry is determining the price. So this has to be accepted, and the challenges that the shipping lines and the freight forwarders also face to get these facilities done. So it's an international business, so we need to understand the economies there. So with that, we'll conclude the session. So thank you all for joining us, and stay safe. Thank you very much.